forest. Asante Sana word in. Asante Sana is a Swahili word that means thank you, and Twende means let's go. Jambo means hello friends, my name is Kaylee. I'm going to be your guide on our adventure through the Harambe Wildlife Reserve today. Just a few safety notes before we head out. Keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside this vehicle at all times, and stay seated for the entire safari. Hold tight to your loose articles as well. Any hats, glasses, cell phones, and cameras especially. If anything falls out of this truck on the reserve, I can't stop to pick it up. It's also very important to remember to be respectful. We're guests in these animals' homes after all, not the other way around. Any attempts to get them to come closer or look at you are far more likely to scare them away. And for your safety as well as theirs, we do not want to risk spooking them. If you're going to be taking pictures, I'd recommend keeping those devices out and ready and on an action, sport, or even live setting to better get pictures while we're in motion. I'm not going to be able to stop for everything we see, and the animals certainly won't be stopping for me either. We do have our clearance to enter the reserve, so we'll start making our way in. The reserve is made up of a few different ecosystems, but the first one we're going to enter is going to be the Little Italy Forest. Going to keep an eye out for animals around here who are shy, reclusive, and good at camouflage. Take a look back here on the right-hand side. There's an okapi pacing back and forth, just behind all that bamboo. The okapi do their best to make sure that they are neither seen nor heard. They're fairly silent animals that communicate almost entirely in scent markings. If you look over here on our left, you see bongos over here. Both male and female bongos have horns that are angled back to keep them from getting tangled in all the thick brush they hide in. Both males and females have those horns. They are a species of antelope. They've got white stripes, so do the okapi that help them both camouflage into their surroundings. White stripes work by mimicking light filtering in through the trees, so it's a very popular form of camouflage here in the forest. Looks like over here on our left-hand side, we're going to come up on a black rhinoceros. The black rhino is the smallest of the African rhinos, but adults will still weigh around 3,000 pounds. They've got a distinctive beak-shaped upper lip that helps them scoop their food up off the forest floor and reach for food from bushes. On either side of us here, left and right, there are two saddle-billed storks. Both of them sitting down, but when they stand at their full height, they can reach 5 feet tall, with an average wingspan of 9 feet. They're fairly solitary birds. They're only ever found alone or in mated pairs like those two, but they do mate for life. There's another kind of antelope over here on our left-hand side. These are greater kudu. These are females, and we can tell because only males have horns. They can get to be about 6 feet across. The animals in the forest do mainly eat from bushes and trees. It makes them a kind of animal called browsers, and that's one of the 2 different kinds of herbivores. Find the other kind a little later on. Right. In the meantime, we'll head into the Safi River, which is going to be home to animals who spend a lot of time in and around the water, so that's where we're going to keep an eye out around here. We're going to find a lot of birds in this river environment. The large grayish-white birds gathered up on the island and along the bank are called pink-backed pelicans. They're actually one of the smallest of the pelicans, but their wingspan is still around 7 to 9 feet. And they're very social birds. They're colony nesters that live in groups that number in the hundreds. Named after the lovely pink color that shows up on their backs during mating season. If we find anything else around here, we are likely going to find it in the water, even underneath it. The water in the river is very important to these animals, not just for drinking, but because it provides an extra layer of protection from the sun and from predators. Might find a few more birds as well. A lot of birds, especially smaller ones, have really good relationships with the larger animals who live here in the river. They'll eat dry skin and insects off those larger animals' backs and get protection from predators in return. Something they might need protection from are the Nile crocodiles hanging out over here on the left. Crocodiles are what are called ectothermic animals. Their body temperature comes from the environment around them and they can't regulate it on their own. So you'll often find them basking in the sun to keep their temperature up. And if they start to overheat, they'll slide back down into the water. We'll start making our way out of the river and onto the largest area of the reserve, the savanna. But before we see any animals out on the savanna, coming up over here on our right, we'll find a baobab tree. Often nicknamed the upside down tree because it looks like their roots are up in the air. They go without leaves entirely for 9 months out of the year to conserve water. They can store thousands of gallons in their trunks, which becomes very useful to the animals on the savanna during droughts. And for that, they're also nicknamed the Tree of Life. Now welcome out onto the savanna. The animals who live out here are mainly grazers, the other kind of herbivore, animals who get their food from the ground and the grasses. Whether an animal is a browser or a grazer mostly depends on the more common source of food in their environment, but there are always exceptions to rules. You might spot some giraffes a little further up ahead. They're actually the only browsers out on the savanna, the tallest animals in the world, and the only ones who can reach most of the trees. They take advantage of having pretty much no competition for their main food source. Giraffes spend almost their entire day eating. Gonna find one coming around the corner over here on our left-hand side. There's also some sable antelopes back there. The sable's horns are designed for defense. They're super sharp and curved back to stop predators from jumping on their backs. In a choice between fight or flight, the sables will pretty much always choose fight, and working together in groups, they've been known to drive off lions. Like I said, the giraffes have no competition for their main food source, and they take advantage of it. They spend almost their entire day eating, usually eating for about 20 hours a day and only sleeping for 30 minutes. And not all at once either. They just take little power naps throughout the day of a few minutes at a time, and they sleep standing up. Most of these animals do tend to stick together in groups for safety in numbers. These animals are not going to be able to rely on camouflage for defense. There's just not nearly as many places to hide. And an animal hanging out alone in a big open space like this one will be a much easier target for predators. So they stick together instead and they protect each other. Zebras stick together in groups called dazzles. Their stripes help them blend in with each other to make it difficult for predators to single one of them out of a group to attack. Because the whole group will look like one big wall of stripes. Oh, we are going to see some wildebeest, we're going to see some Ankoli cattle over here on our right. Ankoli cattle's horns aren't actually as heavy as they look. They're hollow on the inside. And there are blood vessels running through the horns that help the cattle regulate their temperature. Each zebra has a unique stripe pattern. They use them to identify each other. Baby zebras stick very close to mom for the first few months of their life to make sure that they've memorized her stripe pattern and scent. And different kinds of zebras have different looking stripes. We're seeing Hartman's mountain zebras here. Their stripes are very wide and spread out on their back ends and don't connect under their bellies. There's some tiny little antelopes out there on the right called springbok. Those little guys aren't babies, that's their full adult size. They're one of the smallest species of antelope in the world. There's also a whole bunch of wildebeest around here, up on top of the hill. There are a lot of them out here on the reserve, but their herds in the wild can number up to 1.5 million. Aside from humans, they're the most densely populated animals on the planet, and they stay in their groups as they migrate about 1,000 miles every year. A lot of these animals actually end up looking to the giraffes as a kind of alert system. Since they're so tall, they can see danger coming from further away. They've got a better vantage point than everybody else does. So when a giraffe out here starts running, usually everything else does too, because it'll indicate that there's danger on the horizon and other animals haven't been able to see yet. Coming up over here on the right on our first glimpse of an African elephant. And then if you look over here to the left, you'll also find a mandrill over there. Mandrills are the largest species of monkey in the world, certainly the most colorful. They are recognizable by their super colorful backsides and the male's bright blue and red noses. Of course, we're seeing an African elephant on the African savanna, but the easiest way to tell the difference between them and their Asian cousins is the shape of their ears. African elephants' ears are larger, rounder, and look kind of like the continent they're from. It's harder to tell just by looking at them, but there is a bit of a size difference between the two kinds of elephants as well. African elephants do take the title of largest land animal in the entire world, and the Asian elephants come in at a very close second. Elephants in general are a very social species, but the males do tend to be a little more solitary. They split off from the family groups that they're raised in when they reach maturity at about 12 to 15 years old. They'll either start to live a completely solitary life, or they form smaller bachelor herds with the other males. But the females live in the family groups that they're raised in their entire lives. Eventually, they have their own babies and raise them within the same families, so information gets passed down through the generations, like the herd's favorite watering holes and feeding grounds, and each group's particular social rules. I'm gonna find a few more elephants around here, it looks like. You don't know everything about how these animals' pretty complicated social lives work, but that's what the research we do out here is for. We're constantly studying these animals' behaviors, figuring out how they interact with each other and the world around them. That helps us better understand how we can care for the animals who live here, but also protect their species in the wild. That research gets shared with organizations all over the world, and they share their research with us in turn. So we're part of a massive global exchange of information, and the more we know, the more we're able to protect. There's a chance we're coming up on a family group over here. And these family groups are led by a matriarch, who's usually the oldest female in the group. She's the one who makes decisions for the herd, leading everybody to new watering holes and feeding grounds and making sure everyone gets along. We are going to circle around a flamboyance of greater flamingos over here. These are the largest and lightest pink of their species, but no flamingo starts out pink. They all come out of their shells looking a bit like little gray fluff balls. The color comes from beta-carotene, found in brine shrimp and algae. The more they eat, the pinker they look. And they won't look fully pink like adults until at least 2 years. The color fluctuates throughout their lives. Sometimes they look a little pinker than other times. It all depends on their diet. Spot a little one hanging out in between these two elephants over here. Looks like over here we're going to find some rhinos as well. The kind of rhinos that live out here on the savanna are white rhinos, specifically, the largest of them all. Adults usually weigh around 5,000 pounds. They're hanging out around this mud wallow because rhinos have really sensitive skin, and rolling in mud gives them a coating that acts a lot like a natural sunscreen. The mud drying on their skin helps cool them off, and the coating protects them from bug bites too. You can see throughout this area places where they've scraped excess mud off on the trees and rocks to get rid of dry skin and insects. The white rhinos are identifiable not just by their size, but by their wide rectangular mouth shape that makes it easier for them to get as much grass in their mouth as possible at the same time. We're going to keep an eye out on the hills on the left here. The animals who live here can be very good at camouflage and a little harder to spot. But if you look closely, you'll find a cheetah. The fastest land animal in the entire world. Cheetahs can get from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds. That speed plus their camouflage makes them perfect ambush predators. That's how they hunt. And unlike most cats who are nocturnal, cheetahs are diurnal. They're most active during the day. That's so no one bigger or stronger than them will be around or awake to steal their successful hunts. Cheetahs aren't technically big cats at all. They're not nearly as large as lions or tigers, and they lack a few of the key traits of the true big cats, like the ability to roar. They're built pretty much entirely for speed and not defense. So they can handily outrun threats, but they won't be able to protect their food as well from scavengers. Everything about a cheetah, from their bone structure to the fact that they can't retract their claws, is to make sure that they're as light and fast as possible. We're circling around a rock formation called a kopie. These are usually the tallest points on the savanna, so predators and prey use them as lookout spots for potential food and threats. They're also very good opportunities for shade, and the rocks stacked on top of each other create perfect little crevices for the animals to hide in from the sun. If we don't see anybody up on the kopie, they are likely going to be hiding in between all those rocks. Oh, take a look over here on the left-hand side. You see the truck? Standing right next to the truck, as tall as the truck, is an ostrich. The largest bird in the entire world. Ostriches' wings can't actually get their 300-pound bodies off the ground, so they can't fly, but they do run at 40 miles an hour, making them the fastest birds on land and the fastest anything that stands on 2 legs. They use their wings as steering and balance as they run, kind of like how cheetahs can use their tails to control their turns at high speeds. Now, being a very fast animal does require a lot of energy, which means most really fast animals can't keep up their top speed for very long. Cheetahs can only keep up their top speed for about 30 seconds to a minute, but ostriches can keep up theirs for up to 30 minutes at a time. Getting to see it walk around over here. This is actually a female ostrich. We're seeing her walk around here. You can tell because male ostriches will have black feathers. The females have that light gray. If we look real close over here on our right-hand side, you might spot some eggs down there on the ground. The ostriches are never super concerned with leaving their eggs alone because they are practically indestructible, weighing about 3 pounds each with shells so thick they can withstand 200 pounds of force. We're going to head down into the Magadi Glen here, which is home to the Warden's Post, but not home to the Warden because the post got taken over by a band of Nigerian dwarf goats. And they're just the cutest little guys. But the goats are also very useful animals to have around on pastures. They've got amazing digestive systems and they'll eat pretty much anything. So they clear out the tougher vegetation that other cattle can't or won't eat, kind of like a more sustainable and adorable version of lawnmowers. But as we exit the Magadi Glen, the safari is starting to come to an end. But we saw some pretty awesome stuff out there, and if you're wondering what you can do to help those amazing animals, the Disney Conservation Fund provides the funding to the research we do here on the reserve, as well as many projects and organizations worldwide. If you donate at any register in the park, Disney matches that donation dollar for dollar. But conservation doesn't have to end here on the reserve or even on the African savanna. You can participate in conservation efforts at home by getting to know the animals you share your own corner of the world with. So see what you can do. Maybe you can plant a pollinator garden to help out the honeybees, or look up what you're putting in your lawn to help keep the waterways clean. And of course, education is one of the most important parts of conservation. And you're already educating yourself just by being here on this safari. So on behalf of all of the animals on the reserve, thank you so much for joining us today. It was my pleasure being your safari guide. I hope I was able to give you guys a really awesome tour. I hope you get to see some more of the amazing animals out there in the park today, and I hope you learned something new and continue to learn as you continue on your journey through the park. There's so much more out there to see and learn. If you're curious about anything we saw, you can come on up and ask. But check your rows, gather up your personal belongings, and make sure you've got everything you came onto the truck with. I'll share one more Swahili word to round out this adventure. Kwaherini means go well, so go well and go wild. Go make a difference out there and have an amazing rest of your day here at Animal Kingdom and wherever your next adventure takes you. On the right, watch your hands, arms, feet.